will now call on Deputy Thomas Pringle. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Ciara. Minister, this bill sets out to change the entitlements of how lone parents are going to be dealt with after the 2nd of July, and I want to deal with that maybe in my second part of my contribution. But I want to focus on the technical changes, or what are presented as technical changes by the department in relation to carers allowance and carers benefit. Because very often we see bills coming through with technical issues in them, but they have to be looked at, I think, in very great detail to make sure that we tease out what could be the potential negative impacts of people on the ground in relation to them. And oftentimes when it comes to social welfare bills coming through this House, it can take months or even years for the full consequences to be realised in relation to the changes that are being made. And unfortunately, at this stage, it's far too late for people, and it's not possible to revisit the decisions that have been made maybe a year or two before. I think it's vital that we look at the technical amendments to ensure that they do not negatively impact on people. And I want to look at Section 3. And this section contains the 2 clarifications in relation to dealing with carers benefit, carers allowance, and the respite care grant, as has been mentioned by other members. Now, one of the clarifications is to set out circumstances in which a person would be considered as requiring full-time care and attention, and seems to be a shift and a definition to full-time care and attention rather than what is there at the moment in terms of continual supervision and frequent assistance as what is required. And I think that might seem like a technical arrangement, but I think it's a subtle change that will make a significant difference in how applications are actually considered by deciding officers within the department. And I think that's something that really does need to be teased out at committee stage and looked at very seriously. And also then the other changes that the bill clarifies that a deciding officer can take into consideration the evidence provided by the medical assessor and by the certified medical practitioner of the applicant. And that seems to me to be another change that's going to change the emphasis. And my dealings with carers allowance and dealing with constituents in relation to it, you had the means assessment and you had the medical assessment, and if the medical assessor came back approving it and the means were okay, the application was decided. But it seems to me that the changes that's going to take place, it'll allow the deciding officer to actually override the medical assessor's decision making in relation to applications, and that's, as has been said, as somebody without a medical qualification who actually only has to take regard of the medical assessor's decision rather than actually take it into account and take on board on it and act on it. And I think that's very difficult and a very dangerous development that will lead to a lot larger, more refusals. And I also think it means that it allows for a subtle change to take place within the department, maybe an unwritten policy. And I do believe that this is a policy that's been implemented over the last number of years. It's a presumption of refusal on the basis when an application is arrived at in the department, on the basis that, as I'll outline later on the basis that quite a large number of people are unlikely to appeal that decision. And I think that is kind of an unwritten policy, or an emphasis that is in operation within the department, and I think it's something that leaves thousands of citizens without the supports that they are entitled to and clearly entitled to. There's a lot of work for somebody who's actually looking to access carers allowance and care system. The medical assessment form on the application process is actually difficult to navigate and very difficult to actually get a full medical report from a GP as well to ensure that the application is made as strong as possible. And there's a certain amount of arbitrary decisions appear to be made within the process itself, and then if the applicants have to go a lot further, getting reports from psychiatric evaluation, school reports, reports from consultants, and the costs involved in that, and having to submit them with their applications as well. And I think then you have this added thing that the deciding officers are getting additional responsibility and additional support, decision-making powers over the medical assessors within the department. And I think that's something that we have to look very seriously at, and will have to be looked at. And I think actually this provision, I would agree with Flack, should be removed completely from the bill. I think that's maybe designed to speed up decision making within the department and deliver quicker decisions, but I think there'll be more wrong decisions will be delivered on foot of it. If you look in 2013, there were 56,000 applications within the Department of Social Welfare that required a medical assessment, while there were only at any one time 21.8 medical assessors working assessing applications, which works out somewhere in the region of about 2,500 applications per assessor per year, which is a huge burden to place on them, and that's what's actually slowing down the decision-making process, rather than making these changes that'll allow deciding officers to overrule medical assessors. So I think we do need to be recruiting more medical assessors, and that does need to take place to ensure that the proper decisions are being taken. But if you're working from a presumption of refusal at the start, you actually don't want to employ more medical assessors. You want to make the technical changes that are included in this bill. And I think, I think it's highlighted particularly by the fact that on refusals, like in the first 10 months of 2013, 8,917 applications for carers allowance were refused, and of those, only 3,426 were appealed. And on the appeals, there's a success rate of over 32% of appeals in relation to carers allowance and carers benefit. So that shows that there's something wrong with the decision-making process, I think, within the department, when there's no way, I believe, that on appeal that many applications should be successful. And based on the 2013 figures, that shows also as well that based on the success rate of the appeals, that over 2,000, almost 2,000 citizens didn't get what they were entitled to in relation to an application they made to the department, just in relation to carers benefit and carers allowance. And the overall figures in 2013 were for 55% of appeals were successful and the decision was overturned of the department. Now that shows to me that there's definitely something wrong within the department. I don't believe that any appeal system, if the application process in the first instance is working properly, I don't think any appeal system should have a 55% success rate. It doesn't make any sense. So I think that's something that needs to be looked at and needs to be dealt with very seriously. And it shows, I think, that the presumption is, as has been said in relation to this bill, that the presumption is a negative at the start of the process, and people have to prove their entitlement on that basis. And that's a shift that has taken place. And I think if you even look at the amount of appeals and how the Social Welfare Appeals Office workload has increased significantly over the last 4 or 5 years, with the volume of appeals, I think, probably tripling. It shows that change has taken place, and now we're going to enshrine it actually in legislation. In relation to the job seekers and the lone parents and the job seekers transitional payment and what's going to happen here on the 2nd of July, I think it has been outlined by a number of members very clearly and very succinctly. But I think from my read of it, it seems to be that only lone parents who are actually in work are going to be penalised. Lone parents who don't have a job at this stage will be as well off as after July. And it'll actually, I listened to the Taoiseach here, I think it was the Leader's Questions last week, talking about this readjustment in figures and readjustment in payments. It clearly showed that he hadn't a clue about what was actually going to happen in July in relation to lone parents. And I think this shows that actually, and the Minister herself says, that this perception has been put out there and this image has been put out there that people actually are making a lifestyle choice to become on social welfare and to stay on social welfare and not bothering to go out to work. But when you see, as has been outlined by Deputy Collins, 53% of lone parents already in the workplace, those are the ones that are going to be impacted by these changes from July. And in most cases, that's going to be their childcare costs is what they're going to actually lose. So it's actually going to have the reverse effect. The Minister says that this is going to encourage people into work. I think this will actually put lone parents out of work. And that's what going to be the outcome of this, because they're just simply not going to be able to afford to stay there and to afford to continue on in work. And I think that's going to be the outcome of this. And I think what's going to come to pass is what the analysis of all the opposition has been here, that the large amount of money for lone parents, their payments are going to be reduced. They're going to suffer with the extra childcare costs, and they're going to be forced out of work. And that's the only outcome that's going to happen. And and it is kind of sickening when you hear from going back to Budget 2012 when all these issues were outlined and highlighted by us on this side of the House, and the Taoiseach came in and made a big sweeping statement that this won't be implemented until we have a Scandinavian type childcare system in this country. Well, we're a long way off from a Scandinavian type childcare system, but what we will do is create Irish-style unemployment for lone parents by forcing them out of work because of changes within this system, rather than actually encouraging them to stay in work and making it easier for them to stay in work by providing proper childcare for them and providing proper supports within the system.
Thank you, Deputy Pringle. I now call on you to move the adjournment to the debate. Do you move the adjournment to the debate, Deputy Pringle?
Oh, sorry, I moved the adjournment.
Thank you.